السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. second year evening and morning study. إن شاء الله عام دراسي بالخير والعافية والصحة على الجميع. طلاب المرحلة الثانية, this course is called short story, or sometimes we call it narrative. Just I want to take you flashback little. I want to talk about the last year. You know, I study you what literature. You remember what do we mean by literature? This kind of writing that have sophisticated form and sophisticated language, expressing it in a highly organized way and with concentrate passion and emotion, and have a strong influence on the reader. Literature, generally speaking, is divided into the major branch of literature is that poetry, narrative, drama. With poetry, we study so many types. You remember descriptive poetry, sonnet, lyric, or narrative poetry, reflective poetry, and so on. With the drama, we talk about the first drama, that is Oedipus the King, in the second course of the last year. With narrative, you remember you study with narrative. Narrative in Arabic, it is a synonym, it is similar to the word fiction. Generally speaking, they are similar, but there are certain differences. But what do we mean by narrative in Arabic? We call it al-adab al-qasasi. So this word narrative, first, it is not novel, it is not poetry, not written in a blank verse or meter and rhythm. Second, it is not drama, it is not to be performed on the stage. No, it is something written to be read by what? By the reader himself. So this is what we call it narrative. Here in this course, students, we are going to study narrative, this kind of prose writings that are written and contain story. You remember last year also we study narrative, and we take 3 types, I think, of narrative: argumentative, descriptive prose, and narrative prose. This is the 3 types of fiction, 3 types of narrative. It is the same here, we have the same elements. If you make a review, مراجعة, for this type of literature, here in this course we are going to study it in a rather extended way. Students, so narrative comes in many forms. For narratives we have different form. Sometimes it is novel, other times it is novella, short story, and short story. طبعا the difference between those 4 types, it is the length, the page numbers. Okay, the largest one, it is the novel, then novella, then short story, then short story. So we are going to define each one of them separately. The novel. What is the novel? The novel is the longest form of prose fiction. It is from 120 pages or more. So it is not less than 120 pages and more. The date of the starting point of the novel that emerged in England, it is the 18th century. طبعا students, I want you to put in your mind, we are going to talk about England. We are going to talk about the narrative or fiction in England, not in other part of this world. For example, novel appears in France before this time, and also in Russia, also in Greek. So I want you to put in your mind that we are talking about England only. The birthday of England is in the 18th century, and also we have the regarded figures or the prominent figures of novel. It is Daniel Defoe, Samuel Richardson, and Henry Fielding. Those are authors of novel, the writers of the English novel in the 18th century, and we consider them as the father of the novel. Novella, it is a medium length, and it is shorter than the novel and longer than short story. يعني it is roughly from 14 to 120 pages. This is the length of the novella, and what contain characteristics of both novel and short story. يعني each type of narrative, يعني novel has certain characteristics, certain features. Short story has another different features from the novel. Novella, it is something between the two. It gathers the features of this type and that type. What is the short story? Short story, it is also a fictional form compressed between 6 to 14 pages. This is the length, 6 to 14 pages, and the short story, it is American invention. Yeah, it is from America, where it appears in the 18th century. 19th century. Short story, it is a rather 6 page, and it is considered as a new form. It is in the 20th century. So here, students, the difference, first of all, I want you to differentiate between the 3 major branches of literature that we have studied in the last year. You remember poetry, prose, and what? And the drama. And here in this course with me, you are going to study what? The prose only, fiction, the narrative. This is the prose writing. With narrative or fiction, we have 4 branches, 4 genres. Narrative could be divided to be novel, novella, short story, short story. What I want you to focus now is that it is the time that they appeared. يعني in England, novel appeared in the 18th century. Novella appeared in England appeared in the 14th century. And I want you to focus on this, in the 14th century, and I mentioned this later on. Short story, it is new, 19th century. Short story, it is the 20th century. So what do we have here? Let me say that in this course we are going to study what? Novella and short story. What about the novel? The novel, you are going to study it in the 3rd year. Student, you are going to study the novel in the 3rd year, not now. But now we are going to take you certain information concerning the novel. It is important for you as students of literature. So what happened in the 18th century to make novel? Why in the 18th century? What happened in the 18th century that make novel available? Why not before 18th century? For example, 16th, 17th century. Why in the 18th century? يعني before this time, do we have novel? Do we have novella? No, we don't have. We have what is called ancestors of novel. Ancestors means أسلاف. يعني certain let me say compositions, certain texts of literature that help the novel to emerge, that prepare the way or pave the way for the novel to emerge, or help the way to the narrative, generally speaking, to emerge. What are those ancestors of the novel? Let's say here I have 3 types: folklore and popular culture. What is the folklore? Every country has his own folklore and popular culture. What is the folklore? It is the traditions, our traditions. Yani even our Iraqi society, we have our traditions. We have certain songs, we have certain ceremonies, certain festivals, right? So these things help the novel because we have features of the novels. Also, for example, we have what? We have stories, traditions stories. We have we have characters, we have themes in those stories, we have wisdom in those stories. So we have struggle and conflict between the good side and evil powers. So all these are features of the narrative, features of fictions. So folklore and popular culture is not novel because it is not written. It is not printed on page and given to the reader to be read. No, it is what? It is ancestors of the novel. That's why we can consider them as a narrative or a branch of narrative. Epic. What is the epic? Epic, it is a long poem about the deeds of warriors and heroes. It is heroic story incorporating myth, legend, folk tales, and history. We all know what do we mean by epic, and we have epic. For example, Gilgamesh epic. You know, thus he is a person who is searching for immortality and what, and he is a warrior. He is a hero, and he spent most of his time in heroic conflict. There are so many myth, legend, mixing with this epic, and is along. It is poem. It is narrative poem. Epic is a narrative poem. It is not prose. It is narrative poem. But what makes it ancestor of the novel is that it has the what? It has the elements of the narrative. It has the features or the characteristics of narrative. يعني it is poem, it is long poem, but it has characters, it has a story, it has what? It has themes, it has struggle or conflict, and finally we have moral lesson. All these features of what? All these characteristics or features of the novel. That's why it is ancestors of the novel. It is not novel. Why? Because it is not printed in on paper and make a book and introduce into the reader to be read. No, it is poem. It is to be here we have listener for the poem, not reader for the book. That's why it is not a novel. It is not a narrative. It is a poem. But we consider it as ancestors of the novel because there are certain similarities between the two genres, the epic and the narrative. Romance. What is the romance? Here with romance students, I want you to stop a bit little. What is the romance? Romance, يعني most of the students, when I ask him, even in the 4th year, when I ask them what is the romance, they said it is love story between two and so on. So no, actually this is it is not roman. It is not romantic. Okay, it is romance. Romance, it is work of fiction. It is stories. Appears in the 13th century, where it is about what? It is adventure story. It is not love story only. It is adventure story of chivalry, of love. So this is connected. It is adventure story, chivalry, love. What also? It has Gothic elements. And what? Remoteness of setting. يعني for example, dark castle. Those are remote places, isolated. For example, castles, magic, myth, certain creatures that are unusual creature, horrible creature. The mood is what? Is a black atmosphere, and all these elements are connected together with the love story, with the chivalry, with the adventure. So this is the romance. It is not romantic. Students, this is not romantic writing. This is called romance. So romance also, it is, though it is stories, though there is characters, there is dialogue, there is setting and themes, but it is not novel. It is ancestors of novel. Why? Because romance mainly for entertainment, set mainly for entertainment only. This is the reason why romance is not novel. We can't consider romance as novel. No, it is not novel. It is ancestors of novel because it sets mainly for entertainment. What about the narrative and fiction? What about the novella, short story? Those types not for entertainment and for educated people. for make them learn, to entertain, to laugh, and to learn also, not just to spend good time or enjoy their moments and that's all. No, to learn, to make them wake up, to educate them, and make them aware of their position in their society and correct what is wrong in their society. So students, if we focus on their time, all those three types, folklore, epic and romance, they are to be found before the beginning of the narrative. يعني folklore and epic, they are appears with the beginning of humanity. Romance in the 13th century. What about fictional narrative? No, fictional narrative appears where? 18th century, 14th century, 19th century, 20th century. So all those types are appeared before the narrative, not after. That's why they help the narrative to appear, because they share certain similarity, but what is difference with narrative, that is printed on paper and produced to the reader in a book form to be read. This is the first point I have concerning this course, students, that we are going to study narrative, and this is the branch of narrative. Here this novella is, you are going to study it in the third year inshallah. In this course you are going to study novella and the short story, and those the ancestors of the novel. Here what do we have also? The development of the short story in 18th century. طبعا in England it is short story first appeared in America in the 20th century, and what it is the father of this genre, it is Edgar Allan Poe. This is called the father of the short story. According the major characteristics of the short story is that what do we have? He has certain points that it must produce certain unique effect. يعني short story has, when you read it, it is from 6 page to 14 page. First you read it at once, in one time, for example in 1 hour, not divide your reading. You read it at one time, from the beginning to end, it is one reading. This is first. It must produce certain unique effect. يعني if the, for example, the short story talk about horror, gothic story, you're supposed to feel horror, not mixed with other emotion or with other effects. For example, with sympathy, with feel of love. No, one emotion, one effect. Must have a brevity, يعني should be able to read it in one time, one setting. Must have unity. You know what do you mean by unity? Unity of time and place and action. Intensity, begin with first, يعني must begin with first sentence. What? Not spend so many time to talking about the background of the characters or what happened before the events of the story. Directly, the writer directly jump to the main action. We don't have so many introductions. No, directly to the major action, because it is short, so we don't have time to spend it on talking and explaining those details. As we know that the short story, it is not new. It is all as the old language itself. Why? Because we have it is connected, as we said, that is the ancestors of the novel. We have folklore, we have the popular culture. All these things are to be found in the short story, so it is not new, but the actual date, it is what, in the 18th century. Okay, the origin of novella. What about the novella? Novella, no, it is between, something between the novel and between the short story. It gathers what the characteristics of both. يعني if we talk about the novel, novels have so many characters, sometimes dealing with so many subjects or issues. We have so many themes. We have struggles, plot and subplot. We have different type of novel. What about the short story? No, short story, it's supposed to have one theme, fewer characters, one setting, one struggle, one plot. What novella, it is contains the both characteristics. Sometimes have fewer characters, fewer than novel, and larger than the short story. Sometimes it has more than one theme, يعني two themes or three themes at least. Two kinds of struggles, moral lessons, two moral lessons. This is the novella, and we have the novel that is introduced to England in the 14th century. It is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. In this course, I think in the second course, we are going to study The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. It is a novella. It is about 100 pages, and we are going to explain in a detail what do we mean by a novella. In this course, we are going to study short stories. Yes, what do we have? Novel. Here I just give you a brief introduction about the novel, but we don't have to take an example of the novel because you have to study it in the third year. What is the novel? We have defined the novel, and we said that is from 120 page. And the novel in England that appeared in the 18th century, the father of English novel, Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe, this is the novel. Mollfinder, this is another novel. And we have Clarissa by Richardson, and those are the Samuel Richardson, also Pamela. Those we have the major figures of English novel. As I tell you in the beginning of this lecture, novel appeared in the 18th century. But what happened in the 18th century that made novel appear? Or why appeared in the 18th century? Why not before? Why not after? There are certain reasons that make the novel appear in the 18th century. What are those factors? Here we have what? We have, students, these are very important factors. Those factors are very, very important. Here, the first reason, the rise of literacy. In the 18th century in England appeared separating the education, separating the schools, free schools. So people here are going to enter in those schools and start to know how to read and write. And the first reason help the novel to emerge is the people that now educate themselves, because novel needs people or person who know how to read and write. And now in the 18th century, the number of people become popular. They become know how to read and write more than before. Why? Because lots of schools opened in England in the 18th century, so the number of people are increased. In the 18th century, those are educated people. يعني novel only for educated people, only for people know how to read and write. You know that poetry to listen, drama to watch, but novel to read. That's why when the school appears or separate in the England in the 18th century, that's why this factor helps the novel to be the major genre in the England. What about the middle class? The second reason, the rise of the middle class, working class. Here we have a new group of class or new class of the society. Before the 18th century, society in English or English society is that it is divided into what? It is divided into king and the queen. يعني it is something like pyramid. King and the queen on the top, then the lords or the loyal families, lord and the princes, then the owners of the lands. Those are the owners of the lands. Those are rich people, and they have money to buy the lands. At the end of this pyramid, what we have, the whole people or the majority of the people who work in the land, the farmers, and mostly they are poor people. So here we have fixed system of society. King at the top, loyal families, then we have the owners of the land, and what then they have the worker or the farmers in the land, and they are very very poor. This system of the society is fixed. طبعا this is before the 18th century. يعني who born king dead as a king, who born as owner of land dead as the owner of land, who born as a poor as a farmer and or dead as a farmer, because this system is fixed, no way to change it. What happened in industrial revolution? What is the industrial revolution? Industrial revolution, this phenomena, this revolution appeared in the 18th and 19th century. الثورة الصناعية. This revolution changed the whole system of life in England, but in whole Europe also. What happened? They changed the farm by factory. Now we have the owner of factory and we have worker. So we no longer have يعني feudal system, النظام الإقطاعي. No, here we have worker owner relationship. Here we have so many let me see, defects of those industrial revolution. Also we have people transfer their life from farmer to workers. They live in a very poor conditions. They are very poor. They spend so many hours in factories in front of little money instead. Only they get little money instead of their effort in the factory. So here we have a new group of class in the society. يعني here the society is divided into what? Into three classes: upper class, middle class, lower class, or working class. Lower, middle class, upper class is what? Upper class, it is the owner of factory. Middle class, those are working class. يعني they are worker, they have a job, but they are not rich. They are educated, yes, they know how to read and write, but they are not rich. They are suffering for poverty, suffering for unhealthy conditions of the factory. They are not rich. And we have lower class, those those people who have nothing to do, who have nothing to eat. Those group of people who lose their trade as a farmer and no longer have a new trade as in the factory, so they become jobless. That's why we have so many people now without job. This is in the 18th century. يعني industrial revolution in the 18th century changed the system of the life. But how this factor helped the novel to emerge? Here the first feature, يعني the important features of the narrative, that is that it talks about the real problem of the everyday life, the problem of the people. يعني here when you read story, you are going to meet a story about our life, يعني our misery, our suffering. For example, poverty, the war, the struggle between rich and poor people. So these are our problem today. Here the working class find their problems are reflected in the novel. That's why they welcome the novel, they love the novel, they are good readers for the novel. Working class, the workers, are good readers for the novel because the novel is what talks about their problem. That's why they love the novel. And these factors help the novel to be popular in the 18th century. Also in the 18th century we have another factor, that is the growth of newspapers and magazines and the role of publisher. The number of newspaper and magazines become greater than before, because it is invention of what? Invention of printing press, الطباعة. يعني what? In Europe or in England we have the invention of printing. Before the 18th century, the books are written handily in the hand. This is take so many times and take a lot of efforts and times and money, because it writes It is written, sorry, by hand. Now in the light of Industrial Revolution, with the invention of machine, we have what? We have the printing press, دور النشر أو المطابع. This helped the novel to emerge because it abbreviates the effort and the time and the money. Now we can make 100 copies of a novel in a little time, with a little money, with a little effort. So this helped the novel to emerge. Also, we have so many types of, so many numbers of newspapers and magazines. What happened here? The writer of the narrative, I mean a writer of short story or of the novella or even of the novel, instead of make his writing, his product in the market, he published it in the newspaper, he published it in magazines. So this helped the reader to read it, since it cost little money. It is not cost so much money. So it is even poor people can buy a newspaper and read the story, and this helped the novel to emerge. What also have the role of publisher? Publisher, he is a mediator. He is a connected ring between the reader and the author. Now the relation is indirect, because the publisher now is take the story from the author, publish it in the magazine, and the matter become easier than before. The reader could get the story faster and with a little cost, and on the other hand, the writer could publish his writing or his story easier than before and get his money. So these factors also help the novel to emerge. Realism. In the 18th century, we have what is called realism. Realism, it is a movement, or it is a philosophy that appeared in the 18th century. It focuses on reason, on mind, on reality, the here and the now. يعني to discuss the real problem of everyday. And the major feature, the major characteristics of narrative is what? Is realism. No way of fantasy, no way of myth and legend and imagination and so and exaggerated in these things. No, here we have reality. People are going to meet their own problems in those writings, in those stories. That's why they love them, because those writings discussing their problem, suggesting solution, and the reader is going to also educate himself by reading those novels. And you know that only educated people read this writing, and this writing gives some sort of education for the people. You can't educate yourself by reading a novel, by reading a story, because there is a lesson behind this story. Yes, also another role, it is the role of women. What is the role of women? يعني women in the 18th century, she does not have the same role as a man. She mostly spent her time in the home with domestic life, so she has a lot of time. What she can do. Also, she has a little chance to enter into school. Now women in the 18th century know how to read and write, and she could spend her time by reading novels. Why reading novels? Why not other kind of writings? Because novels at the 18th century until now explain or expressing her problem, the woman's problem, what the woman suffers in the 18th century in her society, that she found it in the novels. So she could educate herself, and because the women have time more than men, because she spent her time in the house, not going to the factory like man. No, that's why she spent this time by reading. woman is a good reader for the novel. She is a good what? She is a good reader and a good critique at the same time. She is also a good writer of the novel. Because it is a good reader, she becomes a good writer. Decline of drama. What happened to the drama in the 18th century? You know that we study drama where it starts. You start with the religion, mystery play, morality play, and then develop to what? To the Elizabethan Age. Elizabethan Age, it is the golden age of what? It's the golden age of drama. But what happened after this time? In the 17th century, it is the golden age of the drama. But what happened in the 18th century? No, the 18th century, the drama is declined, lose its power and its shining. Why? Because so many, the church forbidden the drama. Sometimes it is stopped the drama for years, and people no longer like the drama, no longer welcome the drama, because it contains a lot of exaggeration, a lot of fancy, a lot of myth. So they no longer believe in the drama. Instead, they believe in what? They believe in narrative, because it expresses their everyday problem in a direct way. That's why people are going to be reader instead of going to the theater and watch play. And what? Also the fall of romance. Romance, we talk about it in the beginning of this lecture. It is a kind of those stories that are for entertainment, that mixing the imagination and myth and legend, and those creatures with remoteness. All these things does not work now in the 18th century, because people are become civilized people. They are not farmer or simple people who believe in every story. No, now those people are educated people. They are reading newspapers. They are They are reading magazines, and they are reading novels. Novels now educate the people and discuss a real problem, for example, political problems, discuss social problems in their society. So they no longer believe with romance. The romance in the 18th century is not satisfactory for the reader. The reader now only satisfied with the novel. That's why, and here we have the reason why the romance is fall or declined. So being the romance fall or decline, the solution or the kind of genre that take its position, it is the novel. Novel in the 18th century take the position of drama, take the position of romance. So people are welcome the reading instead of watching or listening for watching drama and listening for romance. Mobile libraries means the library become movable. يعني here before that time, here this we call it as marketing, التسويق. يعني the reader instead of go to the market and buy a book, no, it is become a movable. The library is become a movable. They come to the people, to their home, collect the old books and give it new ones, and take a bit little money instead of this exchanging. And that's all. And this factor is very important. The mobile libraries, it is a movable library. It is moving from one town to another town after the reader. So this helps the novel to publish even outside England. Yeah, not only in England, even in outside, in France, in Ireland. So this factor is very, very important. Students, I think that we reached to the end of our lecture. I hope it is clear. I want you to focus on those important information, because we are never to come back to them. You know that the introduction is very important for you students, because you depend on it through all this year, and this is very, very important. I want you to make a review for what? For the browse in first year. I want you to make a review, مراجعة سريعة البروز اللي أخذناه العام. فقط البروز، تعاريفه والاليمنتس مالته، لان احنا هنا راح نحتاجه تقريبا هنا نفس السن بس بشكل موسع اكثر. I want you to focus on this the important point of the lecture, and I hope in our lecture we are going to discuss the point in a rather extended way. Thank you very much, students.